Hey, hi Gagan. Hey, hi Gagan. Hello. Hi Gagan. Good evening. Gagan, I cannot see you. Yeah, I can see you now.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I
Yeah,
can hear you.
I can hear you as well. Good evening. Okay. Finally, let's get started.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cool. So thanks again for being online with me, right? Uh, I've seen your CV, looks really great, but why don't you introduce yourself, right? And I'm also interested to know why are you interested for this particular role? Why did you apply for this role?
absolutely. Thanks for asking. So as you can see from my resume, I'm a senior business analyst with over 10 years of experience. And as a senior business analyst, I've successfully driven a lot of business growth and transformation initiatives. So I have a proven track record of delivering solutions that uh, increase profits, drive efficiency, as well as optimize processes. So my expertise primarily lies in analysis, needs analysis primarily, as well as stakeholder engagement. And I think these two are the cornerstones of a successful business analyst. I've worked on projects across a diverse range of industries globally, and I've also led cross-functional teams. Uh, I've also delivered complex projects within time and budget. In terms of my technical skill set, I am proficient in AWS, SQL, and Python. And I also have experience in Agile, Scrum, Kanban, and waterfall methodologies. I'm passionate about continuous learning and development, as you can see from the certifications that I have. And I've also received multiple project as well as people leadership awards in my organization for continually developing talent. Uh, outside of uh, outside of my work, I also volunteer as a business coach at Rotman School of Business. So anything that involves data, that involves analysis, and that involves engaging with cross-functional teams or multiple stakeholders, those are areas of interest. And that's what also excited me about this role. So given that Wellington is one of the leaders in financial sector, and it's a leader in wealth management, I think there's a lot of scope for technology to play or bring in a strong competitive advantage, not only in terms of how teams collaborate internally, but also in terms of how we disseminate information, how we analyze information. So this interplay of data as well as software implementation, that's the role that really stood out to me, and that's why I thought that this is something that's worth exploring.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so can you tell me, like, or can you speak about one of the recent projects, right, that you would have worked upon, and which was, tell me about the objective of the project, tell me about what was your role, right, and what kind of uh, processes that you followed, right, in terms of the BA framework, right, and then how did you make sure that the project was successful?
Sure, absolutely. So one of my most recent projects was developing a mock interviews platform for a skills development company. So the company had a requirement where they train people for specific skills and make them job ready. And the mock interview process is one of the most critical part of the training process, because that helps determine whether an individual is ready for external interviews and to start applying for the jobs. Now, the company had a very, let's say, uh, traditional process where most of the information was stored offline. The record keeping was done in different spreadsheets, and there was a lot of friction in the overall process. It was not very efficient. And that's when we started discussing the project with the CEO, who was the primary stakeholder. And I think the key requirement that we understood was to build a platform which is online and where people can come in and engage with the platform, and it should become a single source of truth. so that it helps to do away with all the other kind of different sets of repositories and data that the organization was maintaining. So my first and foremost step was to engage with all the stakeholders. So I mapped the stakeholders. I created a RACI matrix to understand who are the different stakeholders, how are they positioned, and then I also developed a communication plan depending on the preferences of the stakeholders, and worked out the best way to approach them and elicit requirements from them. So once I had an understanding of the overarching strategy or the business objective that the company had, then I started breaking it down into smaller goals and milestones. So this was still at the requirements gathering phase, where I understood what is the overall process, or what is the overall what are the goals that different stakeholders have? What is it that they want the solution to achieve? Once I had an understanding of that, I also did a market mapping exercise to look at what kind of solutions already exist in the industry, and if there are any best practices around creating an interviews platform in terms of collaboration, internal processes, so on and so forth. So based on this overall requirements analysis, I created a project plan, which was around a specific set of resources that will we need, the timelines, as well as the kind of ballpark estimate of the budget that this overall solution would entail. And throughout this process, I kept engaging with the stakeholders to keep them informed of the stage where the project planning phase was in, and also take their concurrence, so that by regularly checking in with them, I made sure that there is regular buy-in into the project and into the process and the phase that we were in. So once we got an approval on the project plan, then I worked very closely with the software development team to develop as well as test the solution. So I also created user test scenarios, test cases based on my understanding of the requirements. And once we had let's say a go-ahead from the development team, then I helped with the implementation of the process of the software solution, regularly engaging with the development team as well as with different stakeholders who were continually testing and giving feedback to us to identify issues that could come up during the implementation phase itself. Once the implementation phase was done, then I undertook training and change management because people in the organization were used to a different way of working using different set of tools. So I developed training materials as well as scheduled coaching sessions, training sessions with the different stakeholders so that they could become familiar with the new software and it could drive the user adoption. After this, to monitor whether it was successful and whether the business objectives are being met, I also developed some KPIs to continually track how the system was performing and whether it was meeting these objectives that we started with. And I also kept engaging with the stakeholders to get feedback around improvement opportunities. So overall, I think as a result of this deployment, there was a significant increase in the way the organization tracked performance as well as the number of people that they were able to place, because the feedback was timely and there were a lot of new features that we brought in which did not exist earlier. So this was a high-level overview of the project and the role that I played in that.
You tell me the outcome, like the success metrics that you just talked about, right? What were the numbers after the implementation of this project?
So earlier there were a lot of cancellations and reschedulings.
Can you just talk about numbers? We have discussed a lot about a lot of discussions and topics and things, right? Talk about numbers, right? What were the KPIs? Tell me like KPI number 1, 2, 3, and then tell me like before this was the number and after implementation this was the number.
So in terms of the successful interview rates, we were able to improve the number of mock interviews that the organization was able to conduct from, let's say, 20 interviews in a month to as many as 75 interviews in a month, just because the cancellation rate dropped significantly by more than 50% because the schedules were easily available as a result of the system that we brought in. Along with that, in terms of the revenue impact, there was a significant revenue impact as well, because based on the mock interviews, the company could evaluate who was ready to be placed. And the primary revenue model is that the company earns money once people are placed. So there was a significant impact compared to historical figures. The company was now placing 50% more candidates than what it would do historically. So I think it was not only the impact was not only internal, but there was significant revenue impact, improving the financial health of the company as well. So overall, the project was considered a success.
Now tell me this, right? Once you have deployed such projects, right? As a BA, is that your role to continuously review the existing processes of the past projects that you've delivered and see if we can continuously improve something on that? Is that the role of a BA in an organization?
Absolutely. I didn't go into a lot of minute details, but because we were developing this project iteratively, we followed the agile methodology, and we also created a lot of user personas as a part of this process, because there were different stakeholders who were involved. And after every iteration, after every sprint, we would have a sprint retrospective in which we will not only look at what went well, but we will also look at the things that did not go well. And at the end of the project, we gathered all our findings into a learnings document as well. And again, for the next project that we take up, this will become a useful input during the planning phase in terms of what are the things that can go wrong, what are the things that could go right. So a lot of things that we did, yes, to answer your question, we did lean on our earlier learnings and earlier projects.
No, I believe sorry to cut you. My question was, as a BA, is that your role? Say, for example, you have delivered this project. You moved on to another project.
Yes.
Is that your role to also continuously monitor the past projects that you have delivered and see if there are continuous improvement?
Okay.
Do you think that is a role of a BA? Is that a role of a BA?
I would think so. As a part of the engagement lifecycle, I would, I would say that that's a role of a BA.
But how would you, like, say, as a senior BA, you might have delivered like 15 projects, and then you're on a 16th project. How would you go about monitoring like past 15 projects that you have already delivered?
I think there's an engagement life cycle. So there is a defined duration during which post implementation, I'm continually involved and monitoring the project. And once that engagement is complete, then the project moves on to a different team, which provides support and which provides regular maintenance services as well. But there is this gestation period after the implementation where I do get involved, because I think for my teams, I'm the person with the most, with the deepest understanding of the process, as well as the software solution, in terms of not only the business, but the technical requirements. So immediately post implementation, at least we keep a buffer period during which I have to be involved before the user adoption is driven.
Understood.
And,
Okay, let's talk more about the testing phase of a project. So tell me, like, not just about this project, but in general about any project that you work on, right? What is the role that a BA plays in the testing phase of a project? And be very precise with pointers.
Sure.
And what are the artifacts, like in the testing phase? What is the role of a BA? What are the artifacts that are generally created in the testing phase? How can a BA contribute to those artifacts, right, to a successful testing as well?
So as a senior business analyst, I think testing is a very crucial phase in which a business analyst also gets involved. Right at the start, based on the understanding of requirements and business objectives. Right at the planning phase, the BA creates some of the test scenarios based on how the system is supposed to work. So some of the test cases could be created right at the planning phase. Also, the BA creates the traceability matrix to ensure that all requirements are being not only worked on, but also tested. so that the system is foolproof. So I think traceability matrix is one of the key artifacts that would keep track of user requirements as well as test scenarios. Along with that, even during the testing phase, the BA can also design test cases based on understanding and work closely with the QA team and the testing team to build those test cases based on his or her understanding of the overall requirements and the business objectives. Along with this, again, the BA can also come in during the non-functional requirements testing phase to ensure that not only the functional requirements, but non-functional requirements are also being, that the team is also cognizant of non-functional requirements and those are also being met. So overall, for successful delivery of the project, the BA not only plays a role in defining test cases and working with the QA team to plan the test phases, but also can get hands-on during the testing phase by doing by building test cases, test scenarios, and then doing the testing himself or herself.
Okay. Do you also create an artifact called test plan in that testing phase?
Yes, a test plan is created, but that's primarily led by the QA team and the testing team. But BA does have a role in designing the test cases and working with the QA team to build that document.
Can you help me? Like, is the BA responsible for reviewing the test plan?
Yes, the BA is responsible. The BA would review the test plan to make sure.
Can you tell me high level, like 5 to 6 sections in a test plan document?
Yeah. So in a test plan document, there would be requirement 1, requirement 2, and a breakdown of that right at the functional level. And for each of those requirements, it would be whether there's an issue, whether there's a go, no go. So I think this is how a high-level testing document is structured.
Okay. Let's move forward. Tell me more. Like in an agile project, right?
Yes.
This is not a waterfall project. In an agile project, what are the artifacts that a BA creates?
So in an agile project, I think the first and foremost artifact is the project charter that the BA creates.
Is that is created by BA?
Project manager. Project manager. The project manager creates the project charter.
So let's talk about the artifacts that a BA creates in an agile project.
So the BA creates the BRD and the FRD, the business requirements document.
In agile project?
The requirements document. Okay, I'm mixing it up. In an agile project, the BA creates the
let me help you. Project scope document. So can you help me, like what all things a project scope document will contain?
So a project scope document typically contains who the primary, what's the project, what is the overarching business requirement, and what kind of resources and timelines do we need to deliver on those requirements. So it outlines the business objective and the process and the method, as well as timeline and budget to deliver on that business objective. So that's a high-level definition of what project scope document will contain.
What else? What else does a BA create?
A BA also creates BA creates user stories as well. So all the issues or all the requirements in the form of user personas and user stories. Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Along with that, BA creates a traceability matrix as well to ensure that all requirements are being checked and met.
Next.
Along with that, the BA also creates a risk management template, risk management tool to track project risks, track and outline project risks. Along with this, internally, I've also worked with the project manager to track project progress. So working with the PM to do earned analysis as well as variance analysis to identify upcoming projects, risks, and identify mitigation strategies. So that's another, not a tradition in the traditional sense, but that's another document that I've worked on as well. And besides that, we also works with the development team to build the training documents during the implementation phase. And also this project success metric in terms of what kind of KPIs will help us determine whether the project implementation has been successful and the objectives been met. So I think these are the high level documents, and especially around the agile process. Yeah, I think these are the documents.
Okay, cool. So we've talked about a successful project, right? Can you tell me, like, can projects be unsuccessful because of poor requirements?
Yeah, I mean, I would define an unsuccessful project as one where either the client stakeholder is not happy, or the business requirements.
Let me make it very clear, right? Can a project be unsuccessful because of poor requirements? And when you say poor requirements, what do you mean by it? And have you seen such a scenario? So first question is, can a project be unsuccessful because of poor requirements? Number two is, what does a poor requirement mean? Number three is, have you seen such projects in the past? Yeah, please go ahead.
Absolutely. So yes, if the requirements are not well defined, then there's a very high chance that the project will not be successful. And the reason for that is that you've not understood the stakeholder expectations, their business objectives, and their desired outcomes in a way that you can define the requirements and break it down into specific action items and milestones. So if a business analyst fails to do that, then there's a high chance that the project will not meet its objectives, thereby not meet the needs of the stakeholder. So absolutely, poor requirements will, the probability of failure is very high if the requirements are not well defined. It's not happened a lot, but yeah, there've been one or two projects in my career where the requirements not well defined. Primarily so because the deadlines were very short. The client wanted a turnaround, which was it was an immediate need. So we were asked to work with whatever requirements we could gather and build prototypes and go from there. It was a website development project, internal website. However, because we did not have enough time, so we could not engage with all the different stakeholders who were getting impacted through this project. And when we did finally implement the project, there were a lot of gaps and loopholes and a lot of unmet needs. So I think the project went beyond its timelines as well as the budget. But in the end, we took a kind of conscious decision to go ahead and take that cost. But finally, we learned our lesson, we engaged with the different stakeholders, tried to understand where the project or the solution was falling short, and then address those needs. It did impact our timeline and budget, but in the end, the client was happy.
Okay, so what are some of the things that you will ensure that you don't, as a BA, you don't do it next, so that similar thing doesn't happen in the future?
Yeah, so I think there were some key learnings from this project, which were number one, it's extremely important to have an understanding of the overarching objective of the project, but at the same time also have a very good mapping of all the different stakeholders that a project or a solution would touch. Also, having clarity around not only the functional requirements, but the non-functional requirements is also something I think we did miss in this project. So that's another very important area. We also found that some of the changes that we did bring in created some conflict internally within the stakeholders. So a good learning from there was to continually keep stakeholders updated, do regular check-ins with them, and at the same time also avoid conflicts by being more transparent, keeping open communication, and keeping everyone updated about where the project progress and the different stages.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So I'm good here. Let's talk about more about, so we've spoken about agile projects, right? Tell me about some of the tools that you use either in agile projects or in waterfall projects, right? For doing your day-to-day work. Like what kind of tools and techniques that you use as a BA, either in waterfall or agile projects for executing your projects?
So, so some of the tools that I've used, so for example, for creating user personas and stories and doing sprint planning, we've used Jira extensively. At the same time, use tools to do a lot of data and process modeling as well during the
So
requirement
let's talk
gathering
about the
phase.
name of the tools. Let's talk about the name of the tools. Jira is one tool that you said, right? Okay, I got it. What are the other tools have you used?
So draw.io
Okay.
I've used, and usage charts. These are primarily to help stakeholders visualize their requirements and get feedback on them. I've also worked on Kanban, which is again a visual tool to map different phases of development and make sure that everyone in the team is aware of where the project is and what kind of progress we're making, and if there are any issues that are coming up. Besides that, for time management and workflow management, I've also used Asana, as well as to track and to build internal knowledge base within the project. I've also used Notion as a database and a knowledge management tool. Yeah, so these are kind of regular go-to tools that I've used.
How about Excel?
Yeah, Excel, most of the templates are in Excel. So yeah, Excel.
No, how about
also
the data analysis? As a BA, you might be doing a lot of data analysis, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because talk about, right, today, any project that you work on, right? Data is crucial, right? You will get data from here, there, right? And then that's a job of the BA, right? To take the data from multiple sources. You can use SQL and other tools as well, right? But
Correct.
there's so much of data that is coming in and out, right? Top, bottom, and then you want to share it with your stakeholders that, hey, you would like to use Excel for doing your reporting, right? So as you said, you use Excel, right, a lot, right?
Absolutely. So Excel, and I've also used Power BI to create visualizations and dashboards, as well as for a lot of data analytics. I've also used SQL and Pandas.
Okay, so you used, as you said, you created a lot of dashboards. Can you tell me, or the recent dashboard that you created, like, and just tell me like the charts that were there. Like, tell me about the top 3 charts which were there in this dashboard that you recently created.
So let me talk about a sentiment analysis project that we did for a very large bank. And one of the key dashboards.
Yeah, let's not talk about the whole project. Just tell me like, this was the project and these were the 3 charts, x-axis, y-axis, or any other metric that you want to take to explain.
Yes. So we did a sentiment analysis project, and in that project, one of the key dashboard screens that was shared with senior management teams was around a customer sentiment around the bank. So the x-axis had the positive, negative, and x-axis had the sentiment, while the y-axis had the number of tweets that were getting generated every week. And we had also bifurcated this chart into quarterly reports. So there was quarterly data that was coming in. There was weekly data as well. Another chart was around what are the key issues that the customers are highlighting in their social media interactions. So on that x-axis was the number of issues or the different kinds of issues that were being cited. So we had categorized them. We had built an internal taxonomy. And on the y-axis, we had the number of impressions, number of users or number of complaints that we were tracking against each issue. So these were two very important jobs. And third was around competitive positioning in terms of how our other banks stacked in terms of their positive and negative sentiment. So the sentiment was on the y-axis, and the names of different banks that we were categorizing were on the x-axis. And this was a challenging dashboard because there was a lot of unstructured data that was coming in. So we were also using a lot of text mining and sentiment analysis tools to automate the process.
Were there constant enhancements that were coming on these dashboards because, or the dashboards that you had created were good enough for the stakeholders to easily understand like what's going on in the project? Or there were constant enhancements that were coming up on these dashboards itself, right? Hey, add this chart, add that chart, remove this, add that KPI, remove that KPI.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was an iterative process that we had worked on over a period of 1.5 years, where requirements kept changing in terms of the data that's crucial, as well as the way the data needs to be presented. So initially it was just a single bar chart with different stack charts around sentiments, but then we bifurcated it into 3 different sentiment charts: positive, negative, neutral. So that was one change that happened over a period of time. Then competitive tracking in terms of how we are tracking and presenting that information. There were changes around that also in terms of the visualization. So we moved, also share of voice was another key metric that we were tracking. How much of the total universe of social media interactions in a day, what's the share of voice for our client? So initially we were showing these as bar charts, but then the clients wanted it in different visualization. We moved to a pie chart structure. So there were tweaks and iterations that we did throughout the process.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to the requirements, right? You said you write user stories, right, in an agile project. Yeah. So say you would have written, say, 50 user stories for a project. How do you prioritize them and then send it to the development team for developing it?
Yeah. I mean, as a business analyst, this is a regular occurrence where I have to share stories. The first and the foremost step in terms of prioritizing is based on the business requirements that I've gathered from the stakeholders. So based on that understanding, I try to prioritize what, based on the value to the business impact that a requirement has. So what's the value that it will create? So that's one metric that I use. Along with that, I also engage with stakeholders to understand if there are certain requirements that need to be addressed first, which are extremely crucial to the business from their point of view. And in case there are conflicting requirements, and then I also engage in negotiation as well as value impact and trade-offs that we can make. Along with this, I also I don't influence, but I work alongside the development team as well when they're doing the sprint planning to look at story points and how different points are being assigned. And that's another metric that we use internally to prioritize and take up requirements in a sprint. So broadly, it's largely driven by the value to the business as well as how much complexity as well as time a requirement would entail.
Business value is one metric. Second, you said is time or
complexity and time. So I said business.
Okay, time when you say, is it the effort involved?
It's complexity, primarily complexity.
So business value, complexity. Anything
right.
else?
And also story points is another.
Story points. Okay. What else?
Business value and complexity. That's how you prioritize. Yeah, I think these are the two primarily: business value as well as.
How about the effort involved?
So complexity takes
How about
care
the
of.
effort involved? How would complexity takes care of the effort involved?
If it's more complex, I think another thing that I've also used is
There
the
could
critical.
be the most complex thing of the world, right? And then there would be the most simplest solution for that, right? Complexity doesn't mean that it will take a lot of time, right?
Okay.
Complexity and effort is not proportional. It can be, but it
Okay.
is not always, right? It is not linearly proportional. So do you agree effort is the third thing that you should take care of while prioritizing requirements or not? Yes or no?
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
How about risk? How about risk in the project? So should risk be another metric? Because
Yes,
say
it can be.
if it's a regulatory requirement, right? Or it's something that can break the whole system itself, and that's a risk. So will you consider risk as one of the factors in prioritizing? Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
What else?
so I thought of risk from the lens of a business value, but yeah, risk should be a separate. I would agree. I think it's a risk.
Okay. How about time to market? Will you consider that as a metric?
Uh, yes, but I'm also thinking that will be part of the business
Value.
value in terms of which
Okay.
are the requirements that create the greatest value. I was also
Okay.
looking at thinking of this through the lens of the triple constraints of project management.
Mhm.
But then again, I think value, complexity, and effort kind of do the heavy lifting in case of
Okay.
decision
There's
making.
one.
Yeah.
There's one more metric that we should think of.
For prioritization requirements. Market.
Dependency. So
The
if
critical path
one,
analysis. Yeah, I was going to touch on that.
not the critical path, but say your user story number 2 can only be started once your user story number 1 is completed. You can
Yeah.
have such dependencies, right, in the whole project.
Yes. Right.
So
Okay.
so in that case, you will never prioritize user story 2 first. You will give the user story 1 in the sprint 1 to the development team, and then you will give user story number 2, right? Because user story 2 can only be started once user story number 1 is completed. There will be such scenarios, right?
Got it. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else that you can think of?
I think I'm mostly thinking of second order effects in terms of let's say resource availability as well as
Resource availability.
infrastructure.
Okay.
Infrastructure, let's say you need a server for development, but that's not there. So you kind of move requirements accordingly, so on and so forth.
Okay. Dependencies again. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
That makes
Right.
sense. That your servers are not available, then what would you do? Makes sense. Okay, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
What else you can think of? Can you think of UX? Something that can improve the user experience drastically and then can increase a growth metric. Such metrics or such user stories you would prioritize first because that will have a direct impact on the growth of the product.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the projects that I've worked on, UX and uh, development went hand in hand in terms of having a
No,
larger team of.
the story itself was of UX revamp.
Okay.
So
Okay. Right.
every single user story will have sometimes a UX knock, but then there are stories which are only and only specific to improving the user experience of a
Right.
particular feature. Say, for example, we did a deep dive on a particular root cause or a particular day, and then we only found out that if the user experience of this feature was better, then we would have got some more hits. Say, for example, the add to cart, which is the most important function. Say the add to cart system in an e-commerce platform is as simple as like click it and then just click the payment and then your order is done. However,
Mm-hmm.
for add to cart, there are like multiple steps that your user has to perform, and therefore it is taking time, and then the user experience is not that great. maybe on a mobile platform or on a website. Yeah. So such kind
Right.
of stories I was just asking about. Okay, so let's move forward, right? I
Yeah.
think this was cool. So, Gagan, tell me like, what is the product which is very famous today? So tell me about any mobile app or any product, right? Which is very famous today, but you don't like it.
I don't like it.
Yeah, it's very famous in the market, but you don't like it. And just tell me the reason why you don't like it.
I think, well, there are quite a few of them that
Just tell me
are really
anyone.
interesting.
Yeah, tell me anyone.
I think Facebook's one of them. So
Okay.
Facebook app. Uh, and the
Okay. So
primary
let's,
reason, yeah,
yeah, tell me the reason, like, why do you don't like it?
I think primary reason is that uh, the algorithms are designed in a way that it really suck you in. So I feel that it's a big waste of time. And also then there are issues around data privacy and your own security, well-being. So um, yeah, these are some of the kind of issues that
Can you
have
elaborate
made me stay away.
on, can you elaborate on the first thing that you said that the algorithm suck you in? Can you elaborate on that?
I think the way that the user engagement's been designed, uh, I think as a company, Facebook would be happy because the algorithms work in a way that they engage the users by showing stories that are aligned with user interest. Uh, and over a period of time, they've created different. They've created a internal persona of the user in terms of the likes and dislikes, and they can leverage those insights to show stories which will be like value hooks for the user. So the user becomes more engaged, and it's difficult to close the app because each time there's a new post or a new feed that comes into your timeline, it's as interesting as the previous one. So I think
So you're talking about the positives of the product, right? These are all the positives of the product. Then why you don't like
right,
it?
but the because of the fact that it ends up wasting a lot of time.
Okay,
So
that's a different mindset altogether, right? You like the product, but you don't want to spend it because it eats away your time. Okay. Now tell me about a feature
I know
or a
way
product, right, which is very famous, but you don't like it because of the features that they are created, the way the tool is being launched, or the UX is bad, or like tell me about something like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. So I think Clubhouse, which is
Okay.
very popular, and I I did not like the way the product was marketed. There was a lot of buzz that was created, and usually such kind of buzz marketing initiatives they crash very quickly. So they go up to a certain threshold and then they crash very quickly. And I think that's what happened with Clubhouse as well. Also, in terms of the way the app and the feature set was designed, where you had different rooms where different kinds of conversations were happening, and you could just get in and come out of that room. Uh, I think the paradigm was to do away with podcasts and have more live conversations. However, if I was the product manager, I would also give the option to save those conversations and create maybe offshoots like a podcast or a recorded listen to it later if you can't join. But those kind of features were missing. So a lot of users who wanted to participate but could not because of time got disinterested because most of the fun conversations were, let's say, happening when they did not have the time to participate. So there was no way for them to engage with those conversations or partake in those conversations. So I think the podcast model still exists because of this very reason, that there's a lot of convenience around that. And I think Clubhouse tried to change that with a very innovative model, but the way it was rolled out didn't really work very well with the users. And I think that's a big flaw in the way that the app was rolled out and the feature set was planned.
Good. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear, like what you could have done
Sure.
differently as a product manager. Good. I'm good with that.
Okay.
So I'm good with all the questions. Great talking to you. We have few minutes. Like any question for me?
So I understand that this is a business analyst role, and you're looking at a new software implementation. So how do you measure the success of a business analyst in such a role in such a project? Is it primarily based on the outcomes of the project, or do you use a different metric?
We have, see, like we've our whole organization works on our leadership principles, right? So those are the leadership principles are the one that drives the whole organization and keeps every single employee, right, working towards the common goals. Now, how would we measure the success of a business analyst will depend upon a lot of factors, right? We will, you will be constantly working with a lot of stakeholders. So we have a lot of mechanisms in place that we will constantly get feedbacks from these stakeholders about you, right? And those are like the primarily inputs. Also, you will be reporting to a senior BA or a senior BA lead. That person will also be monitoring you, right? In the first 6 months, 8 months, right? That will also, we'll also get inputs from them. And outcomes of a project is definitely like one of the things, but we don't like, it's not a direct proportion of your success, right? Or how the way you are driving, right? You might be driving the project rightly, but say the project itself is very complex, or the outcomes depend upon a lot of factors. So the project outcome and the BA outcome or the BA success outcome could be directly proportional, or it could not be also. Yeah. So we have enough mechanisms in place to find out that. As I told
Sure.
you, we'll gather feedbacks from stakeholders, from your direct reports, from your direct manager, right? And that will give us enough inputs for us to have a good career conversation.
Got it. Well, thanks for that. That's the one question that I had. I don't have any other questions.
Cool. Thank you very much, Karan.
All
Great
right.
talking
Thank
to
you.
you. Yeah. Someone from the team will get back to you. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Let's take a
Thanks.
pause.
Yes.
We have few minutes. Tell me, like any questions that you have.
Dheeraj, what is ServiceNow? ITSM ServiceNow.
ServiceNow is a tool which is there in the market, right? And that is primarily used for the same thing, like the ticketing, right? Like you do Jira, same like ServiceNow is a tool for that, right? So in an organization, because a lot of, it's like nothing but a business process workflow tool, right? PPM or whatever you can call. It's like Jira, but Jira is mostly used for project management a lot, right? And ServiceNow is used for like tracking tickets, right? Say customer tickets, right? If there's a production bug, a service now ticket will be raised, and then the ticket
Okay.
will be traced, and then multiple stakeholders would be involved.
So
So
if someone asks, what's your comfort? What's your experience with ServiceNow? Is it a very complex tool? Is it?
no, it's not at all a complex tool. So you can say that you have worked on multiple business process management tool, BPM and workflow management tools. So you can definitely get hands-on, and it's not that difficult to work on. Mostly
Got
as a
it.
mostly as a BA, like you will not have to create the tool itself, right? Your job will be to what? You'll get the tickets on this particular tool. You will have to monitor it, right? as
Got it.
as as you do it for Jira, or as you do it on other tools, right? So you will have to ensure that whatever tickets are coming, you open up, like how to check, close, maybe forward to the right team members. That's it.
And Confluence was another one. Confluence
Confluence.
something.
Okay, so Confluence tool is a tool from Atlassian. Atlassian has created Jira.
I will look
They have
it up.
also created Confluence, and I'll tell you what it is. It is nothing but a wiki page. Wiki.
Oh,
Yeah. Nothing but a, so for example, in agile projects, right? Or say you are
mhm.
writing BRD. Now you can create a BRD in a Word document. Say you can create a FRD in a Word document,
Right.
right? And then you are storing it at a SharePoint, right? Microsoft SharePoint or any other repository. So a lot of documents that you create in a project, right? Now, instead of storing it at one single place, if I tell you that there's a tool, it's like a wiki page, or it's nothing like a website where you can just go, and then like a folder structure, you have like you click, you find the BRD, you click, you find the FRD. So everything will be written. It's like a link that you send it to your stakeholders. They click on the link, and then they find out one page where your whole BRD is there, and then they can give direct comments over there itself,
Got
like
it.
a Google
Got it.
Doc,
Right.
similar
Right.
to your
Right.
Google
Got it.
Doc. It's nothing
Okay.
more than that. And
Hmm.
the good thing is there's a good integration between Jira and Confluence. What do I mean by
Okay.
that is, say, for example, in a Confluence, say you wrote 5 user stories, user story 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you want these stories to be converted into Jira tickets. You can just right click and then you will get an option of
Okay,
convert
got
into
it.
user story, convert into a Jira user story ticket.
Got it.
So that integration is nicely done in between Jira and Confluence. That's it.
Got it. I'll look it up also. So what do you think were my very weak areas in the interview? I think
I think
testing
yeah. So because testing is one of the key things that is mentioned in this particular job description. If you would have seen,
and
right? If
then
you go
yeah,
fourth or fifth point, it's QA, right? So you should be very well versed with what's a test plan, right? And this is all these all topics we have covered in our classes.
I'll go through.
So
Yeah.
all the questions that I asked you were all covered into your classes. I
Hmm.
think when you were going through the classes, it was fresh, and then maybe you have
Yeah.
not got chance to.
No, I'll go through. Yeah. Test
So
plan.
I would
Okay.
recommend that you go through all the class notes, and you when if you look at the Google sheet that you get created, right? Go through
The
every
spreadsheet.
single
Yeah.
tab of the Google sheet. Yeah. So
Hmm.
you will find out a lot of content that is already there. Because when you speak about just say test plan I've created, right?
Spreadsheet.
But when you specifically talk about in a test plan, these are the sections. This is where I contributed. This is where I did not contribute, right? Because a test plan again is a document which is created by the testing team. So a
Hmm.
BA doesn't create a test plan. A BA doesn't
Right.
create test cases. So BA can contribute in reviewing the test cases. BA can contribute in writing some test cases which are functional in nature. But anything with respect to very technical in nature or test cases which are like scenario based, it's all created by the testing team. So you need to go back, look at all the things that we just discussed about. So testing is one of the key things. Requirement gathering, right? What are the methods? Prioritizing, right? Prioritization again, we had done this, right? 2, 3 times in the class.
Yeah. We had. I couldn't
So,
remember.
so if you have if you've done something in the class, and if that question comes in, you should be super happy because
Hmm. Yeah.
it's like that you have got the question that you
Right.
have already done. For
Right.
those questions, you should like you should not get 99% marks. You should get 100% marks for the questions which are already done in the class.
Hmm.
For anything that we have not done at all
Fair enough.
is all like where you have to hit a 80% or a 90%.
Sure.
So testing was one area where I felt test plan you did not cover. I even asked you project artifacts, what a BA creates and so you should
Of
have
course.
answered that
Yeah.
that hey, the role of a BA in an agile project could be he could be a product owner, number one. Number two, this person could be also sitting in the development team. There could be a product owner, scrum master, and then a development team and the BA sitting in the development team. So there are
Hmm.
two scenarios. If this person is a product owner, the BA, then
Yeah.
he or she would have created what? Product backlog, sprint
Product
backlog.
backlog. It was not. I was trying to recall that. It was just a
So
washout.
the scope document which is there,
Product backlog.
you did
Right.
not talk about product vision, you did not talk about product roadmap, you did not talk about product backlog. I told you vision, roadmap, product backlog, sprint backlog, all of that you did not talk about. If this person is sitting in the development team, then this person will not create user stories. Yes, sometimes he might break the user stories into simpler user stories which can be taken up in a sprint. Right. So
Right.
those are the things that you will have to. I think if you go back to the classes and then look at the notes, you'll find answers of all of them. Yeah, I
I'll do
think that's the
that.
only
This
thing
is
that I would say. Yeah, and then prepare like for some questions like what are the products, what are your favorite products, right? You should not be thinking too much. And one
okay.
overall, just a comment is, this is my personal. I generally believe like a lot of people are taking notes in the interviews, right? Most companies. So I don't know about this company, but if I'm taking notes as an interviewer, I need to know the points. If you tell me like big, elaborated answer, right? Then and the answer is big. We spoke for 15 minutes, but the pointers were like only three. Not good
Hmm.
use of his time or her time or your time. So you have to be precise, be point by point, and it's okay to ask for time. If questions are coming, you don't have to jump on the answer. Say that I need 5 seconds to pen down my
Got it.
thoughts. And in those 5 seconds, you think about those 5 pointers that you would talk about. So you don't have to think about the whole answer. You just think about the point. 1, 2, 3, 4. Write it down and then talk about point number 1. Say, call it out. Point number 1 is this. Point number 2 is this. Point number 3 is this. And finally, point number 4. That way, even the person who's writing will be very structured and will also remember that he spoke about 4 pointers. But if you talk about a lot of things, I would even mix up or say that, hey, he was covering the same point again and again and going round and round.
Right.
Third, star format. Don't forget. Situation, task, action, result.
Yeah.
So that was not coming out in all the answers. Okay. And when you say result, what do you mean by result? I don't want that a project was very successful, extremely successful. Oh, wow, it went like everybody was talking positive. No, I don't want these. I want numbers.
Numbers. Okay. Yeah.
What savings, effort, client satisfaction, client testimonials. Yeah, so those would be my feedbacks. Okay.
So star, concise. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, this is useful.
Okay. Chalo, all the very best for your interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye-bye. Thanks. Appreciate it. Bye.